Hi, welcome to another Bite-Size Educational as part of this year's Summer of Love. And I'm really excited today to welcome my dear friend and colleague, Caroline. Hi, Caroline.
Hey, Andy, lovely to be here with you.
It's great to see you again, Caroline. And when we think about emotional well-being, because it matters for all of us, and there's a lot of things that actually, regardless of species, are just relevant and apply to all. And one important one is the importance of sleep. The quality of sleep, because all sleep is not equal, right? And I think especially when we think about dogs, we see our dogs being what we might see as being restful, but are they getting the right amount of sleep, the quality of sleep, the kind of sleep they need? So let's dive straight in.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right there. And one of the things a lot of the guardians that I work with will say that their dogs rest a lot. But then as you talk to them about how their dog is active in the day, they'll say, oh, well, if I get up, they'll be straight after following me. So it's how much are they actually really getting into that deep sleep, or how much they kind of do that one eye open, like just waiting for what's going to happen next. And it's that deep sleep that we really need to focus on for our dogs to make sure that they're able to get the regenerative benefits of sleep that we know as humans is very important as well.
So tell us a little bit more then about the qualities of that type of sleep then. What does it mean? What does it look like?
So our sleep cycles, both for us and dogs, kind of go through little phases. So you're kind of going into your light sleep, into the REM phase, into that deep sleep, and then back out again. And it's the deep sleep that we really want to get into. But because our dogs' sleep cycles are a bit shorter than ours, it can mean that they don't get as much time spent in there. So they need to sleep a lot more of the day. And we call them polyphasic sleepers. So they need to sleep in multiple sessions throughout the day, at least more than two. So whereas we can cope with just sleeping overnight most of the time, our dogs need to have regular rest throughout the day. And things that we do know that's really interesting from sort of studies that have been done is that dogs who've had some more negative experiences, some experiences that have impacted their well-being, they are much more likely to go to sleep quicker if they're given the opportunity to, but they won't get down into that deep regenerative sleep as much. So over a period, they will get a percentage less deep sleep than dogs who've had positive relaxed experiences. So you might be more likely, if your dog's had a bit of a tricky situation, to see them doing more of that sort of twitching, running in their sleep, all of those things that show that they might be doing the kind of REM phase of sleep, but not getting that really important rest that they need. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of kind of how those cycles work. And the reason why we want them to get that deep sleep is because not only does it help them with things like physical well-being, cell regeneration, all of that stuff that we know that sleep does for us, but it helps to consolidate learning, process memory. It helps them to kind of get rid of some of the cortisol, that stress hormone that they might be building up during the day. So if we have got a dog that we share our lives with that find the world a little bit more anxious, a little bit more overwhelming, then sleep is something that we really, really want to prioritize.
So much of this, of course, mirrors what we know about humans. And I think when you think about people who've experienced trauma, who are in a particularly anxious state, they might sleep a lot, but because that quality of sleep isn't right there, it's almost like that nervous system still waiting to trigger off. It's not feeling safe enough to kind of think, no, I can dial down and let the normal process of the regenerative stuff happen. And I think I love what you've mentioned there, Karen, because I think it can be very easy for us to think, oh yeah, well, my dog doesn't do much, very restful. But like I say, if every time you go to the kitchen, they're following you every time, and then you got the kids go to school, kids coming back from school, all these kind of things. When you look at them over the day, they're not really getting the full supportive sleep that they need. And especially, I think there's another kind of myth really out there that we consider our dogs somehow have to be active all the time. And we know because of the wonderful work that we have people like Sindor Pangal and others who are looking at kind of street dogs and that kind of thing, just how much they actually spend of their day having good rest and being quite well regulated.
Yeah, and I think that's it's so important. And one thing that I think that particularly the kind of pandemic period sort of highlighted the sleep process for me for dogs was that how much we saw an increase in anxiety in our dogs and in barking and things like that, those sort of more challenging behaviors that we live with. And I think a lot of that was down to the fact that we were all present so much more and we weren't allowing our dogs that kind of space to be able to sleep. And obviously, if your dog is able to cope alone when you're not around, then that's something we really want to make sure we're prioritizing so that our dogs can get that rest, where we're not getting up and down and making cups of tea or like talking on Zoom or whatever it is that's going to distract them, and allowing them that space and time. Because like you say, you know, our dogs naturally would sleep most of the day and they would be more active. They're crepuscular, which means they'd be more active like dawn and dusk. And that's why we often see challenges around our puppies' behavior, particularly because as they are kind of trying to learn how to fit into our human way of life, you often see they're kind of processing those stresses of the day in these zoomy type behaviors, you know, that witching hour at like 6-7 o'clock at night, and you see them waking more early. So our dogs, when they come to us, if you are welcoming them as a puppy, often display much more natural doggy behavior in terms of sleep than our dogs do later on in life. So it's interesting to watch that and be mindful of why those activities might be happening.
And that's really important, especially for puppies, because I've seen it just over the many years that I've been working with the general public and their dogs, especially when they get young dogs in. Quite often, people feel, you know, I want my young dog to sleep in the kitchen, so that's where they'll start off. Often the puppies in a crate overnight in the kitchen. They're not resting properly now because they're social sleepers, they're socialized. Even just by getting that in those early months, allowing that young dog to be able to have more social sleeping means they sleep better at night, which means they have more capacity in the day to kind of fall into a normal rhythm. It's amazing how many of these pups are actually already disadvantaged by the time they wake up in the morning, because we presume, even if they're quiet, which often they're not, and again, there's this kind of myth about let them cry and whatever else, you know, that is not good advice, because the dog is saying, I need some social support now. That's for another talk, I know, but it's amazing how when we wake up, we presume the dog is rested, and they probably haven't been.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you make about the sort of the crating and that sort of thing, because that does limit our dog's choice in sleep. And even I've been talking with some guardians recently about using like things like circular beds. They became a kind of trend recently that those were anti-anxiety beds because it allowed the dog to feel supported. But actually, a lot of dogs want to be able to stretch out, and when we get able to facilitate the proper deep sleep, they need to be stretched out. And actually that kind of more curled in sleeping style, or, you know, body posture kind of indicates more that that's a more of an anxious sleep for the dog. So by being allowed to have choice, whether it be, you know, when we're in hotter weather, can they choose to seek somewhere cool? If it's, you know, colder, can they seek warmth and comfort from us or from blankets or moving away from drafts? And actually I think choice of bedding areas, of sleeping areas, whether they want to be close to us or away from us, those sort of things are really important. And often we just give a bed or a crate, and then the dog is very limited in how it can choose to rest.
Really important, because two examples there. And by the way, you know, if you start off with your young pup in the bedroom, trust me, because we've been through it ourselves. There's Molly there. She's an older girl now. You're not making a rod for your back on it. When they get older, they'll be able to regulate better. They'll find their own place, and often they choose to go somewhere else. But also at that age, you can let them know, actually, this is where I need you to be, and you can't be here. And they can work that out a lot better. Those first few months, it's all about making that social connection and keeping them comfortable. But yeah, so with Molly, when she was younger, we had like a dog cam on. We created a young dog puppy space for her, so we didn't have to utilize the crate. And it was really interesting, the timestamp, Caroline, on the thing. Within the space of about half an hour, she moved about 5 times. Interesting. And our older dog, Arthur, he's got spondylosis, which is fusing of the back, and also arthritis. I hear him in the night sometimes. He's seeking out. We've got cold tiles by the front door. He'll seek that out. Other times he'll find the rug in the lounge. So I think it's really important that we recognize how important that is. But we do the same, don't we? Right? We I don't know about you, Caroline, but in the middle of the night, I'll turn my pillow over because I like the coldness. Sometimes, you know, and we
leg out, leg over.
And if you get that bit of cramp, you want to walk around a bit, don't you? Imagine if you couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think these are all things to consider regarding the sleep side of things. But this has been amazing. So any little top tips then on things that people can think about? You've already shared about the importance of choice and finding out where the dog might want to be. Even if you're thinking about providing beds for the dog, see where they seem to kind of navigate to, and rather than making them go somewhere they don't feel safe. Especially, I call it doggy feng shui, which is kind of thinking about, put the dog's bed there, yeah, but that means they can't get to their thing without passing people that they might feel uncomfortable. It's just thinking about how they might want to navigate that space. Any other tips that you could give regarding sleep specifically?
Yeah, I think one thing is if you don't have the data, you don't know what's going on. So making a sleep journal for your dog is really useful. And that can be tracking how much sleep they get on an average day, kind of guesstimate what they're getting through their naps and overnight. And then keeping a track of also what activities they've been up to, because you may find that certain situations, certain types of walks, certain interactions with dogs or people might mean that the next day their sleep is much more impacted. So if you can start to see the patterns of how things tie together, you're going to help your dog to be able to kind of create a better week for them. And also thinking about things like if there are external noises that really disturb your dogs, if they do hear a car door banging outside and things like that, and that's going to bring them out of their sleep, whether you can just introduce something simple like white noise to create a buffer between that internal quiet and the external sort of noises that go on. Things like that, just really small changes, or putting temporary frosting onto your window so your dog's not as aware of movements outside. Those sort of things can really help make it a more calm and zen-like space for your dog to be able to get better rest.
Brilliant. So where can people find more about you and your platform, Caroline?
They can go to barketplace.uk or find us at Barketplace on all the social platforms.
And it's a really great educational platform, everybody. There's something there for everybody, whether you're a professional or caregiver. Really value your time today. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Andy. Great to be here.
Look out for some more of these bite-sized educationals as part of this year's Summer of Love. Bye.